Please, permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 136 of Matterhorn Mondays, coming to you live from the Outpost. I'm your host, Matterhorn Matt.
And I'm your temporary co-host, Jeremy.
And it is a lovely Saturday, May 17th. I figured we should throw that out there for some reason. It just ran through my head. Guys, we don't record these on Monday. We record them on... It's Sunday. Did I say Saturday? I meant to say Sunday. Today's Sunday the 17th of 2020, you guys. We record these on Sunday live on our main channel, as well as the second channel, Matterhorn Matt Streams. If you guys would be interested in joining along, typing in the chat, we'd love to interact with you guys. But yeah, it's going to be a great episode. We have lots of great bits of news that we're excited to get into, but before all that, you guys know the drill. Links to all of our social media will be down in the description as always, and if you'd like to be wished a happy birthday live on the show, you can do so by clicking the Google form, submitting your birthday in the description below, and submit your birthday, submit your name, and we'll add it to our calendar here, our birthday calendar. And this week, surprisingly, we have no birthdays this upcoming week. Yeah, from the 17th up until the 23rd, I guess no one was born within the span of 7 days. But we do have some birthdays next week that we'll get to. But yeah, like I said, click the link down in the description below if you'd like to be wished a happy birthday live on the stream. We'll add it to our calendar. And the most important announcement of the show, if you guys would like to voice your opinion on any of the topics we are currently discussing, you can do so by calling up 575-386-5814, leaving a voicemail, and we'll be listening to the voicemails live throughout the episode. And we do have a voicemail from Mr. Alex, the historian, that we're excited to get into. Yeah, we'll get into that right after everybody's favorite segment, Matt Snaps.
A whole wide world of knowledge awaits underneath the couch. It's once again time this week for Matterhorn Matt Snaps.
Matt Snaps, everybody. The greatest theme song. But you guys, I'll switch it up next week, I promise. I'm sticking with the Mango Madness. This is just what we had in stock at... I almost just dropped this out of my hand. My hand just almost stopped working, you guys. But anyways, Mango Madness Snapple is what we're drinking today. And yeah, I have lots of ice in here because the worst thing in the world is a warm Snapple. So let's go ahead and pop this open right now. Oh, that was the best snap we've had in a while.
Yeah, you know, we should start ranking the snaps.
Ranking the snaps. Okay, we can start right now. This is ranked number 1. Yeah, this is
great.
The best snap we've had in a while. I think the plastic bottles give the best snaps, but this is glass, as you can see. But let's see. This is real fact number 689. The Roadrunner chases after its prey at a blurring speed of up to 25 miles per hour. I guess that's blurring. That's slower than most cars, but I suppose you could categorize that as blurring. But yeah, we actually had like a Roadrunner that we befriended at our old at our house. We would feed it like clumps of like ground beef, and he'd come back every day expecting us to feed him ground beef. And then one winter he never came back. Either he found someone else to feed or he was fed on himself by another animal. But so yeah, that's story time on Matterhorn Mondays. But why don't you refrigerate your Snapple?
T-Will says we have Jeremy on both screens. I for some reason, and you're just screen sharing, I'm not on the actual YouTube thing, I don't see that. Is that what's happening?
No, it should just be me and Jeremy. It should... I think T-Will's just messing with us, because I can see here on the live feed, it's both of our cameras here.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what T-Will's getting at there, but...
T-Will... Did you break into the bourbon again, perhaps?
Timothy, Let's see. Well, May Cause Disneyness said, why don't you refrigerate your Snapple, then it won't get watered down by the ice. I do refrigerate my Snapple, but it's hot in the office. Well, we fixed the air conditioner recently, so it shouldn't be much of a problem going forward, but I just like to have ice in my drinks, I guess. I like to keep them chilled, not too chilled, but you guys, I just lost all my diamond armor in Minecraft. I think that's the perfect note to go ahead and move on with the show. We can go ahead and get into Mr. Alex, the historian's voicemail here. We haven't heard from Alex in quite a while. It's been actually like 2 weeks since he's been on the show, but yeah, let's go ahead and give this voicemail a listen here, see what Alex has to say to us.
Hello everyone, Alex the historian here, and as many of you might have already known, I'm moving to the state of Oregon. So I currently live down here in Orange County near Disneyland. And so I'll be living with some family up there, and it's actually looking like a really great experience already because I'll be moving into a nice new apartment and starting a whole new life up there. And I will be continuing my own channel as I work up there, but my vlogs at Disneyland probably won't happen anymore because I can't get down to Disneyland to do them. But I will have a whole new set of shows and things that will be happening on my channel, as well as the fact that I will be returning to Matterhorn Mondays as soon as I get settled in. I probably won't be settled in until the first week of June. So anyway, that's when you can expect to see me again. But so far, I'm doing great. And I wanted to thank everyone for all the support they've been giving me. And I'm really excited about this new chapter of my life. All right, you guys have a great podcast. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a magical day.
There it is, you guys. Straight from Alex. He sounds very happy. I'm glad that he is looking at this situation very positively, moving to Oregon. Me too. I know I would be very stressed out. I'm sure Alex is stressed out, but I would be, I'm glad he's handling it.
One of the most stressful things ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I can't imagine moving states like that, when you've spent your whole life. Yeah.
We are very, very excited for Alex's new chapter. And like you said, the first week of next month is when we can expect to have him back on the episode. The whole gang will be back together. We're very excited to have Alex back. We miss Alex, you guys. But yeah, everybody go ahead and tweet Alex send him some positive vibes, comment on his videos, go like his videos, subscribe to his channel if you haven't already, which if you haven't subscribed to Alex, what are you guys doing? He's been on the show for almost 136 episodes, almost consecutively. He's missed a few here and there, but yeah, that's that. And again, 575-386-5814 if you'd like to be wished, or if you'd like to leave a voicemail for the episode. But I think it is time to get into everybody's second favorite segment, News from the Peak. Oh, is the transition gonna play? It's going. Oh, I tried. There it is. Let me try one more time here.
We now present.
Oh, it's a little glitchy there. Good enough, you guys. News from the Peak. I swore I pre-loaded the transitions. I guess it must have... Well, anyways, for our first bit of News from the Peak here today, guys, this is exciting news. Hamilton is releasing early on June 3rd. July 3rd, not June 3rd. That is July 3rd. I mistyped it in the graphic there. July 3rd to Disney+. This is exciting for me. I've always wanted to watch Hamilton, but the only copies I could find were like bootlegs on YouTube, and I didn't really want that to be like my first experience. But this is supposed to be the whole original cast, including Lin-Manuel Miranda, filmed, and this will be released on Disney Plus July 3rd, not June 3rd. I messed up on that. For our second bit of News from the Peak here today, a permit has been filed for the fabrication and set installation at the Star Wars Hotel, and thankfully it's looking like this hotel won't go the way of the Legendary Years Hotel. Of course, we all know that was abandoned for many years, and then they eventually came back and sort of retooled the idea, but the permit that was filed here does expire January 29th of 2022. So that may or may not be a set date of when they can, the Imagineers or the construction workers can expect to finish installing the sets, but the official opening date for the hotel is, of course, 2021, but it will most likely be pushed back to 2022 once these sets have been installed, because there's been no work, at least as of yet, on the hotel. It's been ceased due to the pandemic, of course. And finally, for our final bit of news from the Peak, Percy Jackson, a series, live-action series, is in development at Disney+. Author Rick, and this is a tough one, you guys, his last name, Rick Riordan, I think is how that is pronounced. I apologize if he's listening. Did make the announcement on Thursday on Twitter, and like I said, he does note that the series will be live-action, and each season will be following each separate book. Now, I've never been much of a fan of reading in general, so I've never read the Percy Jackson series, the books.
That's why I'm here.
Exactly, you guys, exactly. But Jeremy, what are your thoughts here on all of these wonderful bits of news here from News from the Peak?
It's weird with the Star Wars hotel. It's so vast and so ambitious that I've always been like, are they actually? It's been hard to wrap my head around the fact that they're actually doing it. So this kind of makes it a little more real. Oh, it's happening. It's gonna happen. Hamilton, I was fortunate enough to see the original Broadway cast the first summer it opened on Broadway, and it's it's really exciting piece of theater. I'm excited that obviously it was a sensation the minute it opened, and everyone's listened to the album. So I'm excited that people who aren't able to go see the show live are going to be able to see the show as it's sort of close to as it's meant to be seen. So that's pretty exciting stuff. Yeah. Very
exciting news from the Peak. Yeah, I've always wanted to see Hamilton. I liked Lin-Manuel Miranda in Mary Poppins Returns. That's the only like movie I've seen him, or like play or whatever, where I've seen him actually like sing and stuff. So that was my first exposure to him, and I liked him a lot in that. So I'm excited to see this Hamilton again, July 3rd, not June 3rd. I messed up there, but
it says July 3rd.
Does it say? No, it says July. Wait a minute. I swore I read June 3rd on the graphic. Okay,
no,
guys.
You said June 3rd.
I said June 3rd, but it says July 3rd. Guys, it's going to be one of those episodes.
I'm worried. I'm really worried.
It's going to be one of those episodes.
I'm scared to continue.
Well.
Also, T. Will saying that when you go to your second camera, it's showing me, which is weird because I don't see that on your screen. I don't see that right now.
No, it's because it's showing you on the monitor here. I think that's what he means, because I have the Discord pulled up full screen here, and Jeremy's right here on the monitor. So that might be what he's referring to. So we were kind of confused there, but we got it down. Thank you, T-Will, for informing. Yeah, it's kind of like Inception there. Hi, Jeremy on the screen. There he is.
That's so...
Oh my goodness. I need another monitor, you guys. But anyways, yeah, that has been news from the Peak, and we do have some great bits of actual news to get into. For our first topic, we are going to be running down the recent interview that Bob Gurr did on the brand new, or I guess not brand new, D23 podcast. And of course, we're going to be getting into our COVID virus rundown news of the week for our second topic. And then finally, we are getting into the Attraction Retrospective, which I'm disappointed in, you guys. Our Twitter poll, I put out some great attractions, and I'm not to say that I don't like the attraction that was voted in. I love this ride. I guess love's a strong word, but I love the other ride more. But anyways, we'll get into that. Of course, not going to spoil what ride that is for. But yeah, we should go ahead and move into our first topic of the day, which is, of course, the very lovely Bob Gurr interview that he did on the, what is the official title of the podcast? It is called the D23 Inside Disney Podcast. So it's officially licensed, I guess that's the right word, by Disney. Official Disney podcast, and we just wanted to try and recap what Mr. Bob Gurr said on the episode, because Bob Gurr, great Imagineer, great person all around. I think he's one of the very few Imagineers who, not to say like, I guess just to say one of the very few Imagineers left out there from Walt's era who takes, I don't know how to explain myself. He's a great guy, you guys. I love Bob Gurr. We all love Bob Gurr, but yeah, the hosts on the show, and link will be in the description to the full episode if you guys would be interested in listening along. The hosts asked some great questions, and since Bob Gurr is one of my favorite Imagineers, like I said, we decided to give you guys a recap just to try and take a little quick break here from all the, pandemic news that we're going to be getting into, because that is sort of taken over at least a large chunk of the show. But we try to find at least a few, bright spots out there in the Disney world to try and highlight for you guys. And this is one of them. Jeremy, before we get into this interview here, what are your thoughts on just Bob Gurr in general? Of course, a legendary Imagineer. Like I said, really great guy, but just before we move into it.
I would probably go so far as to say he's one of the most important figures in the terms of the theme park industry in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
He, in terms of technology, and he's an inventor, really. I mean, his resume is name a ride vehicle, name a figure, name anything, and he invented it. I mean, it's incredible. He designed the ride vehicles for a bunch of classic attractions. He designed the so much. He designed the monorail, for crying out loud. And helped bring roller coasters to Disney in terms of theming, and he just has contributed so much to the theme park industry. And the fact that I think he's 88 years old.
Yeah.
And he goes to Burning Man and he rides motorbikes and does interviews and gives tours of Southern California and Hollywood for Disney history stuff, and talks about he's one of our great windows into that era of WED.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like he's a window. We hear stories about working with Walt and stuff like that, but he also is that era as well. I mean, those are the type of people, those really genius creative minds that Walt attracted to his company. I love Bob Gurr. He's great.
I also love Bob Gurr. Redmond said he's a hell of a kisser, so we'll just take his word for it.
You have a story, Redmond?
Redmond, call in, leave a voicemail, buddy. We'd love to hear. Please. But like I said, the D23 Inside Podcast was the podcast he was featured on. Link will be in the description if you'd like to listen to the whole thing. We're just going to sort of recap what he said, sort of just some interesting things that he may have said. But he did give some background on filming for the Imagineering story, more specifically the Matterhorn scenes that he filmed, which I felt like was one of my favorite parts of the Imagineering story, was when Bob Gurr sort of went behind the scenes for the Matterhorn, took us up to the higher levels of the Matterhorn, and of course shot some hoops in the infamous quote-unquote basketball court that is up there. And then of course in the episode we see him write his name. There's a big wall of cast members who, I think it was the cast members who worked the Matterhorn. They all signed their name on like the electrical boxes or something like that. And Bob Gurr never wrote his name until the day that they filmed that episode. He wrote his name there, which is kind of fitting. He designed the Matterhorn, so it would be fitting that he signed his name along with all the other cast members who worked the attraction. And Jeremy, what else did Mr. Bob Gurr talk about here in the episode?
One thing I loved about the podcast is he actually talked about that moment and working with Leslie Iwerks, who directed the documentary, about how the shots of him shooting hoops in the Matterhorn were totally candid.
Yeah.
He didn't think that he was being filmed at all. He was just shooting those hoops. And the same thing with signing his name on the wall. He was sort of tricked by Leslie Iwerks to just sign his name, and he didn't realize that she was trying to get a shot of him doing that. So it's kind of cool that those moments were candid, of just Bob Gurr being Bob Gurr. Yeah, another one of my favorite parts of that podcast is, how he talks about Walt, clearing up some misconceptions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the way he talks about his fellow Imagineers, a highlight for me was when asked to describe Mary Blair, he said something about how she was Walt's favorite artist, which is true.
Yeah, which Mary Blair, of course, is a great artist. And one of my also favorite things that he said his favorite Disney movie was Fantasia. That sort of took me by surprise. He didn't take me as like a Fantasia kind of guy. I would have said something like Bambi.
He totally takes me as a Fantasia kind of guy, because it's totally invention. It's all invention, concept, and experimentation, which is what he idolizes about Walt, and why he loved working for Walt was how, a description. What makes a true genius is someone who keeps inventing and reinventing what they do, and keeps experimenting till the day they die. They never rest on their laurels. And Walt genuinely, truly fits that mold. And so does Bob Gurr, really. So I think that's why they worked so well together.
Yeah, and of course, is Bob Gurr the last... I don't think he's the last sort of link that we have to Walt. We have...
No. We have Rolly Crump.
Rolly Crump, and that one woman who did the... I can't remember her name. She was in the Imagineering story, too. Oh my gosh. I can't remember her name for the life of me, but I think she's one of the... she helped do the... add the characters to Small World. What was that? What was her... The animated characters to Small World? I can't remember her name for the life of me, but... yeah, Jeremy noted that Mary Blair was one of Walt's favorite artists, which I thought that was very interesting as well. I guess I sort of learned a lot about Mary Blair through the the Fantasyland Historyland episode that we did, which link will be Kim Irvine. There it is. Thank you, Mark. Kim Irvine as well.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because her mom was Leota Toombs, who is another great Imagineer, and so she was around all of that early WED people and stuff like that. But I don't think she started really working for Imagineering until maybe the 70s. Yeah. But of course, because her mom was Leota Toombs, I'm sure she was around all of those greats.
Yeah, and like Jeremy said, one of my favorite parts of the episode was just Bob talking about his experiences with Mr. Walt Disney, and I think I'm remembering it wrong. The note that I have written down here, he said one of the best lessons that he learned from Walt was how he never killed ideas that you gave him, and just in general giving the constructive criticism on projects that you were working on. That was one of my favorite things that Bob detailed about Walt, because that's something we've heard, or maybe even touched on in some of our previous Historyland episodes, was how Walt never really shot down your ideas. But yeah, that is one of my favorite parts of the episode. Him talking about Walt in general. It's nice to hear someone talk about Walt who actually has some connection to the man, other than just people writing books about him who've never met him, or just trolls on the internet saying just terrible things about him. But
something we've talked about a couple times on this show, I've talked about extensively with Alex, is how it's so incredible. I mean, Walt is a pretty recent figure in terms of just human history, and even in terms of like American history. Yeah. He's a modern figure. And it's astounding to me how there's so much myth that surrounds him that everyone just accepts and actually believes are fact. It astounds me. It's so fascinating to me. And so I think a lot of people's goals of these sort of history channels, history programs, is to course not debunk those myths, but to really kind of reach out in a wide, accessible way and say, no, the actual history of not just Walt, but of the company is actually really integral to 20th century culture. And, it's worth sharing. So, and it's funny that he was saying, it's like, and it's so true. There's so many biographies and books written about Walt, and it's hard to gauge, it's hard to gauge what information comes from where and what their angle is. And he says, I can speak because I worked with him. I know him. I met him. I've had conversations with him. And it's so true. I mean, just for the Historyland right now, I'm literally reading simultaneously, going through like chapter by chapter, 3 different biographies of Walt at the same time, just because some people have different perspectives and biases and angles, and I'm trying to mine those different perspectives and when they're valuable for my perspective, and then it just sort of broadens that even more. So he's so right about that, but it's so fascinating. Someone who's a relatively recent figure in history is so shrouded in myth, and it's hard to pull back the mythic curtains of Walt and Disney and say the actual facts are actually more interesting than the myth,
Yeah.
But
yeah, I do find that very interesting as well. And another just very brief detail here that Mr. Bob Gurr said about Mr. Walt Disney. He's sort of, I think the interviewers asked him some kind of question about like what he was like personally to them versus what people perceive him as. And again, I didn't write down the direct quote that Mr. Bob Gurr gave. You can go ahead and listen to the episode, link in the description. He talked about how most people viewed Walt as some sort of god, I think is the term he used. And he said that Bob said that he was just a normal person, just like everybody else. I thought that was kind of very interesting as well, because I do feel like, at least in our community, we do hold Walt to such a high standard. I mean, of course we should. I do feel like we should. He's responsible for all of these amazing things that we're talking about today. Films, parks, Disneyland. But yeah, coming from Mr. Bob Gurr himself, someone who did work with Walt for many years, just a person like you and I. It just feels kind of weird. I don't know. But anyways, Jeremy, do you have anything you'd like to add before we move on?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, like I said, we just wanted to give a little rundown here. We love Bob Gurr. We hope to eventually maybe have him on the show one day. Bob, if you're listening, ytmatterhornmatt@gmail.com. Let's get an interview set up.
Be great.
But yeah, we felt like we just wanted to include this just as a little.
Someone's going to troll you now, Matt.
Probably. Someone will email me, bobgurr@gmail.com, something like that. But anyways, before we move on, we do have a voicemail that I would like to get to. Let's see. This is from Mark, or TASG Vlogs, in the chat. So let's go ahead and give this a listen here before we move on to our next topic.
Hey guys, Mark from TASG here. This Friday, May 22nd, is the 5-year anniversary of the last time Disneyland ever hosted a 24-hour day. I think Alex might remember working this, actually, but the 24-hour day ran from 2012 to 2015, and it was so popular that time. My question to you is, do you think you could handle 24 hours at Disneyland, especially now that Galaxy's Edge is open? How would that change? How would things change? Or, what would you do? Would you be able to last a full 24 hours? I want to know what you guys think. Thanks.
That is an interesting question. I can barely handle staying in my house for 24 hours, but I feel like that's not really comparable to something like Disneyland, where you have lots of other things to occupy your mind with other than just like sitting at home watching like YouTube videos or Netflix or something. But I feel like, I don't know, that's a tough question. I guess I should say I've never actually stayed up for a full 24 hours. I've always given up at 4 or 5 in the morning. I feel like that's the point where I just really crash and I'd give up. But that's an interesting question. I feel like I could last 24 hours at Disneyland if the rides are all open. I could just even ride on Pirates for literally the full 24 hours. I feel like I'd be fine with just that. But Jeremy, what about you?
If I was there by myself, I don't think I could do it,
That's true. If you're there by yourself, I don't think,
If it was a plan with a group of friends and we were going to go and do this together and it was a plan, I think we could do it. I think it would be tough, but, it's hard. Yeah. I don't know. I think if I was with friends, if they ever did it again and Matt and I were we're going to plan to go to Disneyland and do this and report back, we would have a reason to do it and we'd muddle through and we'd go a little crazy probably and it would be fun, but I don't think I could do it just on a whim by myself. I think at a certain point I'd be I got my Disneyland fix. I did Haunted Mansion and Pirates and I walked around a little bit. I'm good to go.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think I'd be able to do it too if I were alone. But next time Disneyland has a 24-hour event, I will do my darndest to try and be there.
I'll join you.
Jeremy will join me. Maybe even Alex will join us as well, hopefully. Whenever that is. I don't know when the next time they'd do that, but guys.
Probably never.
Be on the lookout. 24-hour live stream. Matterhorn Mondays live stream from Disneyland. But anyways, thank you to Mr. Mark for that great voicemail. But now I think it is time for us to move into our second topic of the day, which, of course, as you all know, is the COVID news rundown of the week.
This week on Matterhorn Monday, Matt and company continue their reports and discussions on COVID-19 and its impact on the Disney company around the world.
Yeah. Bring back the People Mover, Disney. Or at least just the music. Release the music on vinyl record. I'll be happy. But anyways, for our COVID news rundown.
The music actually exists on vinyl record, but anyway. It's very hard to find because they basically source that music from old sort of Muzak production music stuff. So if you can find those original vinyls, where they're sourced from, you can have it on vinyl.
Now that would be something. Guys, link me, please. That would be epic to own. But before we get, this is the COVID. Someone said COVID Corner should be the name of this segment, which I feel like is a little too campy.
I kind of like. It's fine. COVID rundown. It's serious.
COVID rundown. Yeah.
And it's temporary. More importantly,
it is. Yeah, temporary. This is a temporary segment. We hope that this will end fairly soon, where we won't have to be talking about this kind of stuff anymore. But we feel like if you guys don't catch up with the news, this is a great way to sort of digest all that. We're going to be running down some headlines and highlight one news article that we would like to touch further on. So for the headlines, we're talking about Walt Disney World plans another large debt sale to further boost financial position. And of course, links to all these articles will be linked down in the description below if you'd like to look further into them. For our second headline, Walt Disney World Vice President reiterates that July reservations are not indicative of a reopening date. Third here, we have Disney closes the Frozen Broadway show. And from my understanding, the show... Put my mic there. The show actually... That was the last time that the show aired was the last time the show... Well, not aired, performed. The last time that the show was performed was the last time that the show performed ever. From my understanding, at least. Very sad. I know a lot of my friends love that Frozen on Broadway show. And then fourth here, Walt Disney World warns guests that they, quote, voluntarily voluntarily assume all risks related to exposure to COVID-19, unquote, in a new liability disclaimer. I'm assuming that is maybe included in like the terms and conditions of maybe like the tickets that you buy when entering the park. But yeah, of course, the links will be in the description for all that. And finally here, Disney shops and restaurants to reopen May 27th at Disney Springs. This is the main headline that we will be getting into today that we'll be highlighting. Last week, we did detail that Disney Springs was going to begin its phased reopening with the opening of some non-Disney shops and some non-Disney, I believe it's just restaurants actually, non-Disney restaurants that would be opening on the 20th. But now we do have further details from Disney themselves that on May 27th, we would see the beginning of opening some Disney shops, Disney-owned and operated shops, as well as restaurants as well. And I guess just to reiterate, the May 20th openings that the non-Disney restaurants included Chicken Guy, Blaze Pizza, and Planet Hollywood were some of the restaurants included in the opening. And, of course, on May 27th, the Disney-owned shops that would be opening, shops and restaurants, includes the World of Disney shop, the Deluxe Burger, which will be mobile order only, and the Marketplace Co-op. So, yeah, this is very interesting. Again, last week we did note that, Shanghai actually reopened. So I guess this is the U.S. park's first step into the maybe phased opening of course, Disney Springs, but just of Walt Disney World as a whole, and eventually Disneyland as well. And I can't remember the exact date, but I'm pretty sure the shopping district in Shanghai Disneyland, I think it's called Disneytown, opened up in, was it March? Or, I don't think it was March. It was one of these earlier months ago. And then a few months later, of course, Shanghai Disneyland had its soft reopening once again with a limited capacity. So this may or may not be indicative of, maybe 2 months down the line if you compare the two Shanghai Disneytown reopening their shopping district to the Shanghai park reopening. You could sort of translate that to the U.S. parks. Disney Springs opens, and now maybe in a few months, Walt Disney World will open. But again, I don't want to say that because that's not necessarily true. Again, China was sort of ahead. Would ahead of the curve be the right word to use? Ahead of the curve compared to us U.S. People, since we did get the exposure later on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've been dealing with this longer, so
yeah,
you can sort of try to estimate then when approximately the Disney parks will open. However, our country has been a little bit laxer on how and ill prepared and how they've handled, all of this. So it may be a little longer. I don't know.
Yeah, but if you guys want to make that comparison between the two, you can. But we just want to reiterate that that's not necessarily a comparison that you should make, just because, like we said, the U.S. has been dealing for this with the whole virus, the whole lockdown thing after China. So China was ahead of the curve when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I guess, of course, May 20th, the non-Disney restaurants will be opening, and then the 27th of May is when the Disney-owned shops and restaurants will begin to reopen. So this is the first sign of life, you guys, and whether or not you guys think this is a good idea or not to reopen these, to each their own. But we do have some more details that Disney Springs provided on the safety and health measures that they'll be providing once these restaurants and shops do reopen. Let's see. Limited parking was one of the first sort of health concerns that was addressed here. Temperature screenings, of course, at the entrances to all the Disney Springs as well. Face coverings required for everybody above the age of 3. And of course, physical distancing, reduced hours for all the shops and restaurants as well, of course, for help. I believe they do that to help desanitize everything, gives them enough time to sort of prep for the next day. And of course, finally here, we do have an increased focus on disinfecting and sanitization. I think that's how, sanitization? Either way, you guys get the gist. Either way, it's okay. But Jeremy here, what are your thoughts on the Disney, because we did detail last week that the non-Disney shops will be opening, but now we do have confirmation that some of the Disney-owned and operated shops and restaurants will be opening May 27th. What are your thoughts here when it comes to that, and how that may or may not be indicative of maybe in a few months Walt Disney World might open, maybe in a few months Disneyland might, or Downtown Disney and Disneyland might do the same? What are your thoughts when it comes to that?
It's going to be entirely up to Disney. So the state of Florida could fully reopen, and they're trying to do that as quickly as possible, with a very limited time of having stay-at-home orders. I'm not going to get into my opinion about that, but it'll be entirely up to Disney. It's still up to the businesses to reopen, even if the state reopens, which of course that becomes difficult for workers who still feel unsafe to go to work, because now the government is not on their side at all. They're basically saying you have to go to work. But if a business doesn't feel safe enough to reopen, then a lot becomes difficult in terms of unemployment. And there's already been a ton of issues with Floridians collecting unemployment to begin with. But again, I'm not going to go in my opinion about all of this. So in terms of, Disney Springs reopening, I mean, obviously the state of Florida, they can. And Disney, I think, is going to listen as closely as possible to the medical professionals to make sure that even though they're in a state that is, reopening, that they're going to try their best to make sure that it's a safe work environment. Can't say the same for a lot of other companies. So Disney, fortunately for Disney, they are they're going to be taking into consideration social distancing and stuff, as they should. So we'll see. It's a sort of a little experiment here with Disney Springs reopening. I don't know. And they've made very clear, this is not a sign that the parks are opening short behind. They keep pushing back reservations. They keep pushing back dining reservations as well. And every time they do that, they keep saying, this does not mean the parks will open, when you can make a reservation. We're just keep pushing back these dates. I froze. I keep freezing. Okay, now I'm back. They keep pushing back these dates as they learn more from the medical community and, of course, local governments as well. So it'll be they'll play it by ear.
Yeah, play by ear is really the term which I never understood that term to begin with, but off topic, but that is the term that we should be using here when it comes to this. Like we said, even in one of our first headlines that we mentioned, the Walt Disney World Vice President reiterated that July reservations are not indicative of a reopening date. Same as Jeremy said, the same can be applied to this Disney Springs reopening. They could very well close Disney Springs a week after they reopen the shops and restaurants if they find things didn't go so well with when it comes to managing everything. If they find maybe some outbreaks, even, which would be like the worst case scenario when it comes to this. Very well Disney could close Disney Springs once again a week later once the shops reopen. So yeah,
it's totally true. If the state of Florida, if we see a huge spike in the state of Florida, which which is totally possible, mind you, then they may have to. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, playing it by ear. If someone can explain that phrase to me in the comments, that'd be great. But
I think it means, Matt, like you play it by like ear, by what you hear, by information that you get.
Okay.
Like as you go.
I guess that makes. I mean,
you want me to explain rule of thumb? Do you want me to say, do you know what idioms are? Even? Do you know what that word is?
No, I know what it is. I think that explains it well. But anyways, off topic there. But yeah, so are any of you guys in the chat, in the comments, going to be attending the Disney Springs reopening? Because I do know we have some listeners, some viewers who live near the Florida parks. If you guys are, let us know down in the comments below. Let us know your experiences. Of course, we won't get to report on the actual outcome of this until not even next episode, I don't think, because next episode would be the 25th, and then the Disney shops won't be open until Wednesday the 27th. So, yeah, we are just hoping that this goes well, of course. yeah, Jeremy, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to add on the Disney Springs, or even on actually any of the other headlines that we ran down here for the COVID rundown?
No.
All right. Well, like I said, we'd love to hear what you guys have to think about Disney Springs finally beginning its phased reopening. Maybe the parks will follow, but probably not, you guys. That is the one thing that we do want to hammer into everybody. We're not experts when it comes to... Oh, excuse me. When it comes to this kind of stuff, we're not experts. We just... I ate Panda Express before this, and it's... Anyways, we're not experts when it comes to this sort of health stuff, when it comes to all this business management stuff. That is for, of course, Disney and the, World Health Organization, the government, to try and handle that themselves. We're just, reporting all this stuff to you guys, trying to explain it in layman's terms as much as we can to you guys. Yeah, that is what, of course, we want to reiterate. We're not experts when it comes to this. Take everything we say with a grain of salt. Like we said, Disney Springs could very well close a week, maybe even like a day after they reopen. We don't know, but I think that is going to do it. It's possible, but I do... Totally possible, but I think that is going to wrap up this second topic. And before we get into our attraction retrospective, you guys like Puckermint? Do you guys like the liveplace.com? Well, if you do, it's time for a quick break. Listen to this. It's time for a quick break from the show to hear from the show's sponsors. Oh, the transition's messed up. If you guys are wondering where you can find even more family-friendly live streams just like this one, head on over to theliveplace.com. The Live Place is your headquarters for great family-friendly live streams. They cover anything from Disney to other vacation spots, various variety shows, and have some amazing streamers like Resort TV 1 and myself. Also, be sure to check out puckermint.com, where you can find amazing pins and stickers. Puckermint is based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a few hours from where I live. And since I'm a big believer in supporting local artists, we decided to partner up. Be sure to use the coupon code down below when you make your next order. Again, that's puckermint.com and puckermint on Instagram. All right. We are back. And whether you like it or not, you guys, we have returned from our ad break. Jeremy and I are back and we're going to be continuing Matterhorn Mondays. Do you guys like Puckermint?
God. Were both of our mics on?
No, it's because I was... my mic was on because I was reading along. Yeah, I was trying to...
Oh, I thought you were just doing that because you're very egocentric and it's something we're trying to work on.
No, that's exactly why.
With you and...
We have a meeting after this, actually, to further talk about that.
Yeah.
But, guys...
I'm kidding.
It's Matterhorn Mondays, you guys. But, yeah, it's time for, I think, everybody's favorite Puckermint advertisement, slowed reverb. Wouldn't that be something, like one of those YouTube remixes? But anyways, it's time for Attraction Retrospective, everybody. Everyone's favorite segment on the show, besides Matt Snaps, of course. That is, of course, everyone's favorite. It's unanimous, everyone's favorite, but this is everyone's second favorite. And I'm disappointed, I must say. We put out the poll this morning. We had Small World, we had Submarine Voyage, and I put Small World again, because I wanted to talk about Small World.
That was your own doing. It was. I told you to put another attraction on there, and you didn't do it.
I was trying to think of a ride that was not as exciting as the two, like, to try and balance it, but I couldn't, I ended up just putting Small World twice, and you guys betrayed me. You guys betrayed me by voting for Submarine Voyage, which, like I said, not to say that Submarine Voyage is a terrible attraction. Lots of history behind it that we can, of course, dive into. Haha, pun intended. Dive into. But, yeah, I wanted to talk about Small World, but we can save that for maybe next episode or for a future episode. But like I said, of course, we will be discussing Disneyland's version of the Submarine Voyage on this episode's attraction. Oh, we should have put Utopia. That would have been a surefire loser for when it comes to that.
That's not true. It totally would have won.
It would have won. Guys, you guys like to troll when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I don't know where there's been all this like recent hate toward Autopia. I don't understand. It just was so. I woke up one morning and everyone was like, "Get rid of Autopia." Out of nowhere. I was like, well, okay.
Gives me headaches because of the gas fumes, but
oh,
we'll save that for next week when you guys eventually vote Autopia for Attraction Retrospective. But yeah, like I said, Disneyland's Submarine Voyage is the attraction that we are going to be discussing today. Now, this attraction actually has lots of history behind it. I believe it's the second or the seventh biggest fleet of submarines. I can't remember off the top of my head. We did a whole Historyland episode on this many years ago.
I know. Almost exactly 2 years ago.
Almost exactly.
Mid to late May. Exactly.
That's crazy. But again, I can't remember if it's the second.
I love how you're like, it's either the second or the seventh.
No, because they both start with S. And that was like the correlation I made between the two. Reverend Puck said seventh. Clearly it isn't the second. Okay, I guess that would make sense. So it was eighth at the time. We should know this because we're talking about the history of the ride. But anyways, of course, Disneyland's Submarine Voyage opened alongside the Matterhorn as well as the monorail at Disneyland in 1959, I believe, is when all three of these attractions opened. And I think it's sort of, we say this all the time because this was sort of opened or touted as the second, quote unquote, second opening of Disneyland with this huge expansion coming into Tomorrowland, sort of pushing the boundaries of what Walt's vision when it came to Tomorrowland was. And of course, if you can try and put your mind back into the late 1950s, submarines, of course, were, I guess, technically in the people's minds viewed as a futuristic mode of transportation, I guess is what you could say, because of course Walt put it alongside the monorail, of course. But Jeremy, before we get into everything, what are your thoughts on the Disneyland Submarine Voyage? And I guess we're going to be starting off here, of course, starting with the original version, and we might get into the updated Finding Nemo version later on. But what are your thoughts here on the original Submarine Voyage that opened in 1959?
This is pretty cool because I actually was able to experience the original attraction.
Wow.
I know. I'm still young, though I want to reiterate that. It was actually one of my favorites when I was, a little tiny boy. And I loved the bubbles. Particularly. I don't know why. That you can still see those when you go on. But no, I loved it when I was a kid. I really enjoyed it. There's a mystery to it, and for me personally, one of my favorite areas, I have two favorite areas in the park that feel like Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
One is the Rivers of America between Frontierland and New Orleans, right on the riverbank there, looking out over to Tom Sawyer Island. There's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
Tied with that, of course, is right next to the Matterhorn, looking out on the lagoon with the submarines passing by, with the monorail going around, looping around. It's just one of the greatest, most serene, visually stimulating areas in the park. So it's a great. I love it. So it just feels like Disneyland having all of those attractions operate in tandem. And when you look at footage of 67 Tomorrowland, with all of those pieces moving together, the submarine voyage, the Matterhorn bobsleds, the Skyway, the People Mover, it is so incredible. It's just like I wish I could be around to see all of those units moving together in tandem. But of course I'll take what we have. So and probably one day the submarines will leave us once again, and I don't think they'll ever get that tone right. Because clearly they've sort of abandoned the idea of kinetic motion being visually stimulating.
Sadly,
in design. A weenie alone does not a land make.
What is the weenie? This is off topic, but what would you say the weenie of Star Wars land? Would you say the weenie would be the Millennium Falcon? I wouldn't say so.
I would say the weenie is the Millennium Falcon, but it's not a great weenie.
Okay. Off topic there. I just don't know why that popped into my head.
No, it's one of my critiques, one of my little critiques of the land. There isn't any sort of visual draw. It's designed to lead you to the Millennium Falcon so that you round a corner and it's there.
Yeah.
And I think that is an effective thing, because it's like, you're about to see it, and you round the corner and you're like, oh wow, there it is, and you have a smile on your face. But I do think it's more visually interesting when you enter a land and you see something off in the distance, and you become curious about it, and it draws you toward it, and it's sort of a journey going towards something itself. Anyway, we don't need to talk about weenies, and I hate using that word, because if anyone's watching this who's kind of just like casually into Disney, they'll be like, why are they saying weenie? Weenie was Walt's term for a visually interesting landmark that would draw you to it. The reason he used the word weenie literally because if you stick a hot dog in front of a dog, they'll like go toward it or something like that. Alex could correct me on that, because I'm usually just like paraphrasing all the information that I've read over the years. But that's Walt.
We need to come up with a better term than weenie.
Yeah.
And if you guys in the chat or the comments can think of something, we will. I
feel so like shameful whenever I say that word, because I'm like, if there's anyone watching who's just casually interested in this, they're gonna be so confused.
Yeah.
Anyway,
off topic. We can talk about that maybe another time on the episode, but yeah, I have to agree. I never got to experience the original Finding Nemo submarines, the original submarine attraction. But I do think the first memory I had of this ride was, I think it was maybe 2005. I remember very distinctly the monorails had that wrap on them that was promoting the grand opening of the submarine, of the Finding Nemo submarine voyage. They were all yellow. I think they looked like this, the repainted. Yeah. I think it was 2005. I can't remember, for the 50th anniversary. I don't remember, but
I think they reopened 2006 or 2007.
Maybe
I think it was like 2006. So maybe it was 2005. We don't do our research before these attraction retrospectives. These are not history land. These are just talking about why we love these attractions. That's why we're so ill-informed. Okay.
Well, yeah, I give a lot of hate on the show to the submarine voyage, and I feel like a lot of it, well, I guess hate's a strong word. I give a lot of critiques to the attraction. Some of it is justified. The whole lagoon area does take up a large chunk of real estate, which could be used for something other than just this one attraction, but we can get into that later on in the discussion. But that is one of my main critiques of the attraction. But I do have to agree, that area of the little pathway between the lagoon, between the Matterhorn, is one of my favorite places in the entire land. And I wish they would maybe expand that with some benches or something to like sit so you can overlook the lagoon. I feel like that would be a great addition, with just some like seating areas with some canopies or something. Yeah, that whole area, amazing. I'm sad I never got to experience it with the Skyway going overhead, of course, with all that great kinetic motion that we're always talking about. That is that's missing in a lot of Disneyland nowadays, sadly. But yeah, I do agree. The lagoon is very beautiful. For one, I've gone on record of saying that I would not be sad if they got rid of this attraction. I would be sad if they got rid of the attraction and the lagoon. I'd love for them to keep the lagoon in some capacity, but we can sort of touch on that later on in the discussion. Now, like we said, the ride opened in 1959 alongside the monorail, alongside the Matterhorn. which makes this attraction over 50 years old at this point. I believe they celebrated their 50th birthday in 2019, I think. Last year was when
that would have been their 60th
would it have
anniversary.
Been? That's right, 60th. Okay. Got my numbers confused, but I do remember seeing the little pins that they sold for the anniversary. So yeah, that does make this attraction very old, and I guess that should be a sort of transition point into the attraction's ride experience. Very old attraction, of course, very claustrophobic, like someone said in chat. This is one of those. Yeah, this is one of those attractions where it's not really a must-do for me every time I go to the parks, just because I'm not really a fan of like sitting down in a confined space with a lot of people around me with no AC as well. That just sort of builds onto the whole negative, not really negative experience, but just not great experience in general of the attraction. But I'm sure if you could put your mind in someone who lived back then when this attraction first opened, you would be absolutely mesmerized of the fact of how this attraction what's the word I'm looking for, because the submarines don't actually submerge. They do sort of little visual tricks with like the bubbles coming out from the windows. They make it look like it's sinking, or diving, I guess is the right term. So yeah, the ride doesn't actually submerge, but they do a great way of tricking the mind into thinking that it submerges. Of course, it goes into the dark show building. That sort of cancels out all the outside light and really makes you feel like you're underwater. But I do feel like this would be one of those attractions that really mesmerized guests when it first opened back in 1959.
Well, I can say it mesmerized me when I was 4 or 5 years old. So, and I was a kid. And when you're a kid and you're experiencing something for the first time, you don't consider the age of the thing, because when you experience it for the first time, it's like you're in 1959 experiencing it for the first time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, really great word. I almost said great way. Really great way of phrasing that, Jeremy. Yeah, of course, we can talk at length about the negative aspects of this ride, but I feel like we should save that for later on in the discussion. Let's talk about the positives of the submarine voyage. Of course, the biggest thing for me is the scenery that it offers. The lagoon is, of course, a staple of Disneyland, like we've said before. But Jeremy, what other positive could you give the submarine voyage other than just the beauty of the lagoon, the beauty of seeing I feel like that's a hard question.
The lagoon alone is not. I remember the years in between they closed it originally and they reopened it. The lagoon alone does not make that area visually stimulating. It's the lagoon with the submarines that completes that image. And the person who understood that the most was the person who fought for its return the most, who was none other than Tony Baxter, who just is so in tune with the ideas of the park and what works in the park that he fought. He said, no, those submarines actually are a staple to just existing, are a staple to the identity of the land. And he fought for its return. And, the compromise, of course, that was made was to theme it to Finding Nemo. Now, I will say I don't go on it very often, anymore, for a number of reasons, but not really for any sort of like moral reasons. There's so many other things in the park that I always run out of time. If it was the original version, though, I probably would make a point to go on it more often. Not gonna lie. But I don't know. I'm trying to think back to when I was a kid and why I loved it, because we're talking about the positives. I think it's just so cool being underwater, looking out. There was just so many. It just really stimulates the imagination, especially a child's imagination. You're in this sort of interesting space. Uncomfortable, sure, but you're not thinking about that when you're a kid. And the way you see the ride is you put your head up to this porthole and you don't know what's coming. And I used to be there at the end of the original. There was this goofy sea serpent.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure, Matt, you've seen footage of that.
Oh yeah.
It used to actually scare me when I was a kid. Anyway, but it was kind of a nice reunion. A couple of summers ago, there was an amazing exhibit here in Southern California with a whole bunch of Disney park props that were up for auction, and so I was able to be reunited with my childhood fear of that sea serpent, right face to face. I don't know. I just think there's a ton in that ride that stimulates the imagination. And especially when you're a kid. When you're an adult, this ride is uncomfortable. It's stuffy. It hurts your back. You have to lean and slouch over the entire time. But when you're a kid, you're like, you have so much energy. You like want to see what's next. Chris is trying to get me to. Oh no, he's not. There's just another Jeremy in chat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, what we should mention is that this ride is sort of its own genre now, right, Matt?
Yeah.
And in our Historyland video, the angle that I took when I wrote it was sort of focusing on it as a genre of attraction, dating back to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea as a movie, and how that, of course, affected theme park design and in terms of set design and visual effects.
Yeah.
And of course, how that manifested itself in 1959 as the submarine voyage. And of course, then by the time, Disney World opens, it's the submarine voyage. However, it's the same ride, the same layout, but it's themed to the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea film.
Yeah.
And of course, in Tokyo Disney Sea, they have a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea
different
ride
take on it, but it is generally
it's a different take on it, but it all stems from, and it's really cool. It's a ride on my butt. I would love to go on that ride. I think it's a perfected sort of version of this genre, underwater kind of ride. How unique is that? And but it all stems from this original right here, the submarine voyage. So those are positives too, Yeah,
and I guess that's a very good way to look at it. I guess it's hard for me to like picture myself in like the mind of myself when I was a kid, because it feels like it was so long ago. It really wasn't that long ago, but yeah, no, I do agree with what you said, Jeremy. But moving on, let's talk about some of the negatives of this attraction. I think one that we've beaten to death is the fact that the footprint of this ride takes up a large area of Fantasyland, a large area of Tomorrowland that could be used for, I don't want to say something better, for an IP-themed land, of course, a Frozen-themed land, which is not an ideal, but
exactly.
That is one of the big negatives that we've beaten to death here on the show, is that the footprint of the ride is very large.
Yeah. And I have always stood here in the face of you and Alex telling me otherwise and said that the real estate is used perfectly the way it is.
Sure.
Why would you want to jam pack the Disneyland? And I even defend Galaxy's Edge for only having 2 attractions. New Orleans Square has 2 attractions. If your land is visually stimulating, that is enough. Disneyland is about recreation. It's parts of the park like this that visually just make Disneyland feel like Disneyland. If they were to replace, of course, obviously, if they were to replace this area and make it just as visually stimulating with a brand new idea, brand new concept that fits into this idea of, and another thing we didn't mention is how this is something Dave Smith, the late Dave Smith, talks about, how he loves this area of the park and he loves the placement of the submarine voyage because it's this sort of crossroads between tomorrow and fantasy. And, that I love that. I love that a lot.
Yeah.
But I really think this real estate is used superbly with the what would you rather see, Matt? What would you rather see there?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I guess in general, I'd like to see an expansion of Tomorrowland. Maybe not necessarily something like a Frozen themed land, a specific, Beauty and the Beast themed land. That's not really something I'd be interested in. I'd like for them to maybe keep, we've said this on the show before, I'd like for them to keep a small section of the lagoon, maybe part that is by the Matterhorn, maybe take out the other show building area, Utopia, use that as an expansion for Tomorrowland. I do feel like that would be a better use of the space. Maybe have one of the submarines docked in the smaller version of the lagoon, as like a nod, I guess. But I do agree with Jeremy. The thing about the lagoon is the submarines, of course, that go around that the motion of the lagoon that helps add to the whole overall ambiance of that area. I do agree that is one of the more important things, not just the lagoon, but yeah, Again, we've said this before. I've said this before. I do feel like the land could be used for something better. Better is probably not a good word to use, but
first of all, if we had Imagineering in a place where they were still making things that fit into the park, I just don't trust where the company is to make something that would fit better. They certainly wouldn't create something that helps blend the idea of tomorrow and fantasy. They would probably make a Frozen land or a Beauty and the Beast land as close to a replica of what they've already been making around the world. Nothing new and unique to Disneyland and interesting. I will say this, if they took away the submarines, and when it was just the empty lagoon, I agree with you completely, Matt. It was a waste of real estate. But with those submarines there, it's a complete picture. So it's difficult. If I saw concept art for something that was unique, original, unique to Disneyland, fits into the ideas of that particular area in the park, there's an opportunity to do something really interesting in that particular piece of real estate in the park, then I would be excited. I'm not anti-change in terms of the Disney parks. What I'm a strong critic of is when things don't feel like they're progress. They're moving the form forward. I don't think we've only moved the form forward in the realm of technology. But in terms of creative ideas, in terms of how you tell stories in this genre, in terms of content, I don't think we've caught up. We've just sort of Disney sort of rested on their laurels across the board. Let's remake all of our popular movies. Let's just make rides and lands based on popular content and not realize that parks are its own medium full of original ideas. Anyway, I've talked about that enough on this show. So I think proper usage, if they were to announce that they were going to get rid of the submarine lagoon, get rid of the submarines, and they showed concept art for something that expanded the form, that was creatively interesting, unique to Disneyland, I would be for it.
Sure.
But I know for a fact that would not be the case.
Yeah, no, I agree. Sadly, I agree with you, but I guess another negative of the attraction is the capacity of the ride. It does take a long time to load the guests onto the submarines, and the guests only hold maybe 20, 25, probably a lot more than that. It's been a while since I've been on the ride, actually. Can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, that is another negative. And of course, we should mention that the experience inside the submarine itself, I mentioned no air conditioning, seating very close to one another. Yeah, that is for me one of the reasons why I don't go on the attraction. Not necessarily that I'm like claustrophobic. It's just, if it's like 100 degrees outside and you're inside they're painted yellow now, but if you're inside this tube of metal with no AC, I feel like that's one of the main reasons why I steer away Chris said when someone
Yeah.
farts in the ride, it stays there for the whole ride. Yeah. And I think Alex has told the infamous story of when a baby pooped his diaper on the ride. And he had to go through the entire thing with the smell of poopy diaper. But yeah.
Yeah.
Before we move on, though, we do have a voicemail that I'd like to get to from Jared, a.k.a. Superstar Limo, about the submarine voyage. Now, this is a long voicemail, but we're going to power through it for you, Jared. I'm sure he has a lot of insightful things to say about the ride, so let's go ahead and take a listen here.
Hello, this is Jared, a.k.a. Superstar Limo. So I saw that we're talking about the submarine voyage, and I know we haven't gone to that part in the podcast yet, but I'm just leaving this here for right now. But I have a very big attachment to this ride. It was probably my favorite ride growing up as a kid. I don't know what captured my interest so much. I just thought it was so cool going into the submarine, going into the waterfall, and then looking like you're going deep down underwater and seeing all these ruins and stuff. I just loved it. Though I've only been on the current version of it. I've never been on the original, and I wish I could have. It looks incredible. But, I mean, we have Tony Baxter to thank that we even still have it, because we know that they were trying to demo it, but thankfully Tony saved the attraction. So at least we have it, and I think it adds so much in terms of just it's just so nice to just sit in front of the Matterhorn and just see the submarines go by, hear people on the Matterhorn. It's just such that one sliver of area right there between the Matterhorn and the submarine voyage is such a great place to just sit and hang out. This ride also adds so much movement to the land. I think I would love to see Tomorrowland in its heyday, where you saw both Autotopia, you saw the submarine voyage, you saw the monorail, you saw the people mover, and you saw the Astrojet. You saw all of these attractions moving, adding so much kinetic energy to the land. I just wish I could have been during that time. I just think it's such a cool just concept too, overall, just having guests get into the submarine, and I think it's just such a cool way, because it's kind of very much like once you're in the submarine, you kind of have left Tomorrowland. You're kind of in this own different world. You're in this underwater world, and it's just so cool. And I love the reveal of the lagoon, especially if you're seeing inside towards the lagoon. When you see the bubbles, it makes it look like you're going deep underwater, and then the bubbles clear up, and you see the whole lagoon, and you see all the coral and everything. Just so great. And kind of relate this back to early in the episode, we talked about Bob Gurr, sorry. But we talked about Bob Gurr, and I believe he designed these vehicles, too, which I think it's such an ingenious way. I mean, it's almost like Disney has a full submarine, and they just put it on a track. But, I mean, it's just such a very cool experience. I feel like this attraction has a lot, and I mean, you see so many people from...
Oh, there's two parts to this voicemail as well, so...
Oh my.
Part 2!
Part 2, all right.
Part 2!
Okay. Sorry, this is part 2, because something happened on my phone. But this is part 2 of my first, to lead off of my voicemail. But what I was saying is that you see a lot of this attraction is so impactful, I believe. Like, you can see all these Disney World people who miss it when it was at Disney World, because don't forget it was also at Disney World. Well, the theme was changed a bit. It was majorly a very similar attraction. And it's like, you see that still, that there's this huge fans of the attraction who are from Disney World who miss it. And I think that just shows the power of how what the coolest...
Wow, he went into the submarine.
He's underwater now.
Disney World and any other park. There's nothing like this attraction. Because you have your boat rides that are water-based, but this one takes you under the water. All the sets are underwater, and I think it's so cool how the Imagineers somehow figure out how to take all of the technology that they had for all of their different attractions and their dark rides and somehow got it to work underwater. They somehow got all those animatronics to work underwater, and it creates a one-of-a-kind experience that you can't find anywhere else. And I just love this attraction. I still enjoy this attraction to this day, and even though its current form isn't as great as the original, I still believe there's a lot of enjoyment to get out of it, and I just love it. I just love it a lot. And have a great day tomorrow, and I'm signing out.
Well, thank you, Mr. Superstar Limo, for that lovely voicemail. It's nice to hear someone who's so deeply attached to this attraction. I didn't think people were actually that attached to this ride, but it's nice to know that Superstar Limo, you're out there.
It's interesting that I agree with you, Matt. Like, I don't think people are very much attached to the attraction in its current form. But speaking as someone who, well, I don't know, Alex probably was able to go on the original too, but as someone who was able to go on the original, I am a little bit attached to at least the idea of it being there. So it does have its following. It definitely has its following. Tony Baxter leads that charge.
And perfect segue. Now let's go ahead and talk about the second, quote unquote, second life of this of the attraction. Of course, we know it closed down. And as Jeremy mentioned before, Tony Baxter was the saving grace of the submarine voyage. Of course, it was rethemed to the Finding Nemo submarine voyage. Now, how would you, Jeremy, just very briefly, how would you compare the two versions of the attraction? Which one would you find was the better iteration, since you were able to experience both?
There was a level of mystery in the original that the current version lacks, that I think was more stimulating to a child's imagination than being able to see Nemo and his friends.
Sure.
And I prefer the original. I just think it fit better into the land.
Sure.
I don't understand putting a ton of Pixar into Tomorrowland, which seems to be a trend over the past 15 or so years.
Yeah.
I don't get how it fits into Tomorrowland at all. I can sort of see an argument for like the sort of spin-off Buzz Lightyear stuff.
Yeah.
The Space Rangers, you know, I can sort of see that. But in Disney World, when they put like Monsters Inc. in Tomorrowland, I don't understand why they see how Pixar's content fits into Tomorrowland at all. Now, how it kind of works, because Tony Baxter always finds a way. You know, he's kind of like what Joe Rohde does, which is kind of like, okay, I'll do this track and I'll bring my voice to it. I'll try to find a way to justify it into the land as much as possible. And, you know, it still kind of works. There's still this concept of you're going on a deep sea journey, which is futuristic, which is very Tomorrowland, and you happen to see all these talking fish that happen to be the characters from Finding Nemo, and it still has this. It's still framed as you're going on a deep sea, research journey. And you know, they still have the classic line at the end. You know, should we enter this in the captain's log? You know, no one would believe us. Yada yada yada. So it's just framed differently, and the tone is different. But I do miss the sort of level of mystery,
sure,
and also just originality of the original version. Yeah. And I can speak as a kid. I mean, it's like people always make the argument, yeah, but would that be interesting for kids? Absolutely. You've heard it on here twice. That is so stimulating to a child's imagination, and we're not anomalies, you know.
I mean, well, just kidding. Well, no, I do. I've never been on the original, but I could see. I feel like I'd like the original more. I'm not really a big fan of the Finding Nemo franchise to begin with. The first movie was great.
Oh, the original movie first movie is a masterpiece of Pixar.
The second one was, you know,
yeah.
But yeah, it does exist. That's true. Yeah, it is very weird that that is the IP that they decided. I think that film Atlantis was thrown around. Which I haven't seen.
Yeah, they were banking on that. They were banking on that being a, you know, they were on the throne, you know, coming out of the 90s,
sure,
with the Disney Renaissance, that they thought they could sort of do no wrong. And, Atlantis is a very experimental animated film. They're departing from what they were doing in the Renaissance. And they were banking on it being a success, and possibly it was looked at as a way to save the submarines. And even though the movie didn't quite land, I have to revisit it, and I can't wait for us to revisit it. Probably a year from now.
It'll be a while, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a while. But I haven't seen it since it came out in theaters, so I'd be curious to watch it again and how my perspective on it has changed. I even think that would be better suitable theming to the attraction than Finding Nemo, as much as the movie didn't quite land.
Yeah. I've never seen the movie, but I feel like just based off the visuals that I've seen, I do feel like it would be a better fit. But, well, we've talked about the pros, we've talked about the cons. Now, I think it's time for us to briefly dive into what we think the future holds for good old submarine voyage in Disneyland Resort. Now, we've talked again, we're going to be beating a dead horse here. We've said this many times before. I'm not sure if it was Alex who specifically had his insiders tell him that the submarine voyage was on the chopping block, or if it was just us maybe speculating that, they'd take out the submarine voyage, use that land for another attraction, another land itself. But, Jeremy, what do you think the future holds for the submarine voyage in Disneyland?
Something I learned the summers of 2016 and 2017, when all of those rumors that we thought were outlandish became reality.
I remember that summer very vividly.
No attraction is safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm under the belief that you either do a new Tomorrowland that revitalizes the energy of the 67 Tomorrowland, or you totally, with the spirit of 67 Tomorrowland in mind, tear everything down and make something new. So if they're planning a new Tomorrowland, I do see the submarines being on the chopping block. They've always been an endangered species. So yeah.
No, I have to agree. Sadly, it'll be bittersweet for me the day they eventually do remove the submarines in the submarine lagoon. We've speculated again, maybe they'll keep part of the lagoon. Maybe they'll keep it all together, but I am under the firm belief that they will be removing at least a large portion of the lagoon, a large portion of the attraction itself, replacing that with something else. But we never know. It's a crazy, especially nowadays, it's a crazy time that we live in. Maybe this whole quarantine is making these Imagineers nostalgic for the submarines, and then now they won't get rid of it. So, just kidding. But
no.
Yeah,
love it or to say. I know, yeah.
Love it or hate it, you guys. That has been our attraction retrospective on the submarine voyage at Disneyland. And if you guys have not seen the film that this was based off of, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I would highly recommend watching that movie. That is a really one of my all-time favorite live action Disney movies from back in that era of films. I watched it for the first time, I think, for the submarine voyage episode that we did. It was when I first watched that.
I didn't realize you watched it. That's so
it might have
cool.
been. It might have been
after.
Movie.
It's so good. Yeah.
It's long
and
too,
of course
I think.
It's based on an incredible novel, so read the novel as well. But you don't read, Matt.
I don't read, so you guys
make
are
it very clear here by just being yourself on a weekly basis.
It's true, you guys. But before we end the show, we do have some voicemails that we'd like to get to. Of course, we have a voicemail from Mr. Alex, and then we'll run through the rest of the voicemails, and then we'll close off the episode.
He can't have the final word on this. Okay.
All right, well,
I'm not gonna let him.
let's go ahead and see what Mr. Alex the historian has to say about good old submarine voyage here.
Yeah, it's Alex the historian here. I just wanted to say that I wish they would bulldoze the submarine voyage. I really, it was great for its time. It was great when they had it, in the 60s and 70s and all that stuff. But the problem with it is that it's an extremely low capacity. It just completely lacks the ability to entertain a large amount of people all at once. It's incredibly inefficient. And frankly, every time I write it, I have all kinds of problems. You know, and mainly, the last time I wrote it, I was in there with a lady who had a baby with a full diaper, and she didn't bother to change the baby beforehand because she was in line. So we had to sit there the whole time with the smelly baby diaper. So no thank you, Stinky Subs. I am done with that.
Well, there it is, reiterating the story that I told, that Alex told me. But yeah, that's Mr. Alex the Historian there. Yeah, which Alex and I have talked at length on this show about. So if you guys would like to hear our extended thoughts, I'm sure you can go back a few episodes ago. And
you can also hear an extended debate between Alex and I about the submarine and the submarine lagoon as well.
Yeah,
so,
I'll try and find out what episode that is.
Favorite whenever we disagree. So
especially when the episodes go past 4 hours, because those are the ones where
exactly
where they
that's
teeter.
when we're really going at it. No. It's either we really strongly agree and we keep like coming up with new ideas to talk about, to share with each other, or it's like, no, I don't agree with you at all. So.
Okay, well, this voicemail here is from Mr. Disney Damon. I believe this is in response to Superstar Limo's previous voicemails that he left, so let's take a listen here.
Hey guys, it's Disney Damon, or Day Money in chat, and I just wanted to say how much I agree with Superstar Limo. Like, seriously, I have some of my fondest memories at Disneyland on the attraction. And I think the moment they take out this ride, it's a sign of the changing times in Disneyland, because something Disneyland is known for are the unique ride experiences. Like, seriously, in what other theme park can you go underwater and see animatronics? I think that if this ride gets taken out, it's a sign of Disneyland changing towards screens and no original concepts and ideas for ride systems and experiences. I think that's why it's important to keep attractions like these in the parks, because ultimately they are what differentiates Disney from, let's say, a Universal. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye.
Well, it is worth noting that I think the current version of Submarine Voyage does have screens with projections on it. So, but that's neither here nor there. But it's very heartwarming to hear at least two accounts of you listeners, of you viewers, who have very fond memories, very great experiences of this attraction. This is really the first time I've felt this sort of response to this attraction by other people, because I've always been such, Alex and I are always
because
like,
I wasn't enough.
Well, yeah, I mean, Alex and I have always just heard, from our arguments and then from you. But, that's me and Alex 2 against 1, so we're getting outnumbered now, Alex and I. We're 3 to 2
That's
now.
Fine. I can take down, then I can just deal with Alex. So
that's true. Oh my gosh. Well, I believe we have 2 more voicemails. Let me take a listen here and see what this one would be for. I'm trying to see if this one's on topic. We can just go ahead and listen to this. I think this was from Mr. Avery. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this voicemail from Avery.
What's up, Jeremy and Matt?
This is not Avery.
So 2 things. One, I'd be willing to join you guys on the podcast. I'm just joking. Maybe one day we could actually you could actually see you guys in person. That would be very cool. Anyways, if you were to pick between the original or the Nemo version, which one do you like better? For me, I've never been on the original because when I was born, it already was the Nemo version already. So if you could answer my question, that would be swell. So I'll be watching the rest of the podcast. Thank you.
The transcript said emo version, not Nemo, so I was kind of confused there. This is pretty funny, but yeah, Mr.
Well, I think we already talked about that, so hopefully we already answered that question.
But thank you for the
Ryan.
Lovely voicemail, Mr. Ryan. And I think we have one more final voicemail that, or actually, Okay, yeah, one final voicemail. This is 100%, I believe, from Avery. So this voicemail here will close off the episode. So let's go ahead and take a listen here.
As much as I missed the
Oh, he's quiet.
as I wish that I rode the submarines at Walt Disney World, I wish that they were still there today. I think Mine Train is a great attraction in its spot. And not to mention the submarines are still at Disneyland. I hope to visit Disneyland soon. Even though they're not the same, it's not the same theme. And I love 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I love that movie. The fact that there is a submarine ride, that you could ride a submarine in a theme park, it's a really awesome concept. It's definitely one of their Disney's best ideas, I'd say. Submarine ride at a theme park. You can't really beat that experience. And I just looking at that Skyway picture, looking at that Skyway, the submarine and the Skyway, it's retro Disneyland at its best. It's retro Disneyland heart. And the Skyway was an icon of Disneyland, and I know a lot of people miss that. A lot of people do. But for Walt Disney World, I think that the Mine Train is a good use of the land that the submarine voyage once sat on. Although I like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
4-2 now, you guys. Jeremy has the lead now. Alex and I are the littler people in this debate, but that's fine. I'm just really glad that lots of people have had such great experiences with this attraction, especially such people from our younger side of our audience here have such fun, great memories.
It thrills me every time. One of the wonders of the internet that we're just sort of learning because of COVID-19, I think. But it amazes me, seeing all of these young people who are so fascinated with Disney history.
Mm-hmm.
So that is always hopeful for me.
I agree 100%. But we would love to hear what you guys have to say about this submarine voyage. Go ahead and comment down below. What are your thoughts? Have you been on the original, or did you prefer the original or the newer Finding Nemo version? We're excited to hear what you have to say. But I think that is going to close off today's episode of Matterhorn Mondays. Jeremy, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to say to the audience before we sign off for the day?
Yeah, Alex, I'll talk to you later.
They're having a war in the chat right now, you guys. If you're missing it, watch on YouTube and you can see. But
I don't have time to respond to that comment, but it's not true. So I don't have anything to say.
All right. Well, I think on that note, as always, Jeremy's Twitter will be linked down in the description below, as well as Alex's channel will be linked in the description below. Go subscribe to Alex. Follow him on Twitter as well, as well as my social media, all that stuff, as well as the Discord will be down there as well. And last plug here, the links to all the articles we refer to will, of course, be down in the description below. And I think on that note, it's time to go ahead and wrap.
We've been releasing our series Journey Through Animation. Go check that out. It comes out every other Tuesday. We just did our episode on Fantasia. We will be doing The Reluctant Dragon next Tuesday. That'll be released. So if you want to do it like it's a book club, you guys should definitely watch that and check out those videos. And of course, we're going to get Historyland back on its feet very soon. That's our next priority for you guys. So.
Yeah,
Yes.
Reluctant Dragon on Disney Plus as well, if you guys would be interested in watching along. And then tuning in, like Jeremy said, next Tuesday for what we have to say. And we do have some things to say about, or at least I do, some interesting...
Yes.
I can't talk. It's time to end the episode.
Me neither.
Thank you all for coming to today's episode. And, as always, have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.